How do you optimize your brain health? How do you fuel your body? What does your exercise and sleep routine look like? Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Regeter, and today I'm joined by neuroscientist Dr. Ben Rein. In this episode, we explore the 3 essentials of optimal brain health, looking at the impact of nutrition, exercise, and sleep on cognitive well-being. Join us as Dr. Ben Rein shares practical tips to enhance your mental performance and dives into the science of the human connection with dogs.
And thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited for our conversation. But before we begin, I just want to check in. How were you really?
I am doing pretty well. Thank you so much for asking. And I mean that genuinely because I could tell that this question is intended to evoke a genuine answer. No, I'm doing pretty well. I've had a nice day. Thank you. How are you?
Honestly, I've been sick the last few days. Today's the first day that I've lifted my head up. So it's going great today. I am really excited to be recording a podcast episode today because when I'm not feeling well, it's really hard to have motivation to do anything. But when I have something I look forward to, it helps me get up. My voice is coming back. So today's good.
That's fantastic. I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog aggressively barking in the background. She tends to be a very common guest podcast appearance when I do these types of things. So I'm very sorry. Her name's Zoe, and it appears that we're getting a delivery right now.
You are good. My dog loves to make her voice heard sometimes on the podcast too. She is my little emotional support animal. When I'm crying, she loves to jump up on my lap and give me kisses on my cheeks to kind of wipe my tears away. And sometimes she wants to join the conversation and make her adorable little voice heard.
That's amazing. My dog seems to have no awareness of human emotions. I know many dogs do, like yours, where like if you're upset, they attend to you more. And my dog, like I actually experimented this once, or I experimented with this once. She loves fetch, just as a disclaimer or preface to the story. But I was like, I wonder what she would do if I was hurt. And so I like faked like a heart attack kind of situation and like fell to the ground and collapsed and was laying on the ground with my arms out. And she comes over and she drops her ball in my hand. And I'm like, okay, so if I were to go down, the way you would react is by asking me to play fetch with you and reacting with no compassion whatsoever. I see where we're at. So yeah, she's unfortunately not very inclined to empathy.
Oh, he's like, I don't care what happens. I just want to play fetch. My dog is like that with anyone else. Anyone else, she does not care. My mom had a fall not long ago, and my dog was at her house, and my dog could not care less. But for me, I can just have like a little frown on my face, and she runs up to me and wants to make me feel better. I don't know what I did to deserve that. I think through a lot of so I adopted her back in, I want to say 2018, when I was right before I started really struggling with my mental health and ended up in the psych ward. So she kind of went through that whole process with me. And I think that's really helped her. I guess maybe not helped her, scared her. So now she wants to constantly, maybe a little bit of an anxious attachment now, make sure I'm okay. So probably traumatized her a tiny bit, but I love how like attuned she is to making sure I'm okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. I support that theory that she learned, if mom's unwell or not happy, that she might go away. So I want to keep her happy, keep her here with me. That would make sense.
Yeah, she's so cute. It's really hard when you're kind of at that point where your emotions have taken over and you're not able to provide. I guess I didn't provide her that emotional support she needed at the time either. And I really see my dog as my child. So to not give her that support she needed, she was probably really scared because mom disappeared for a while. And then whenever she saw me and I was with her, I was crying a lot. So for her to recognize that and want to provide that support and get very anxious, but very loving is amazing. Dogs, I don't know what we did to deserve dogs or what I did to deserve mine. She, my whole world.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a great one. Dogs are incredible, and I love dogs, and I love the science of dogs, and there's a lot of research into their behaviors and stuff. It's one of my favorite fields. So much cool stuff.
Tell us a cool fact that you know about dogs.
Um, that when dogs gaze into the eyes of their owners, both the owner and the dog show elevated levels of oxytocin in their blood or in their saliva, I think, in that study, which is the same like bonding response that a mother and her newborn infant show. And so the study that I'm referencing proposes that dogs, as they became, evolutionarily bound to us because it was mutually beneficial for both of us to exist together, they hijacked the, infant parent bonding system in the brain to get closer to us so that we would love them and take care of them by, driving oxytocin release. And that also suggests maybe, although we'll never know, that dogs view their owners like infants view their mothers or parents.
Oh, I love that. Makes a lot more sense when I call my dog my daughter. And it's really true when I look into her eyes. It's so cute and weird that like we'll lay on the floor and just like look in each other's eyes when I'm really sad sometimes. And it instantly makes me feel just a tad bit better. Like that
Mm.
love that I really need at that time. Serious emotional support dog right there. Good.
Yeah. Well, it's real. I mean, there's a bunch of evidence that interacting with dogs, especially your own dog, like lowers your blood pressure and like drives like reduces cortisol levels and all these really healthy physiological signals. So it's amazing. It's like doing yoga or, anything relaxing. It's like going to therapy.
So really great for anxiety levels as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Growing up, I struggled so much with anxiety. I kind of wish I had my dog back then because my blood pressure would just, I don't know my blood pressure. I'd say my heart rate would get really fast and my palms would get all sweaty and I just didn't know what to do. And without any conversations on coping skills or conversations on what was happening, knowing that maybe we all don't have access to therapy or to these conversations or resources, but a lot of people have access to a pet who gives them that love and support can really help.
Yeah, very good point. I mean, given that, there's plenty of data showing that pets are truly therapeutic in more than like a psychological way, but in also like a physical way. Both the mind and body it's therapeutic. It is one of the most, I guess, accessible and effective just like therapies. Now that I think of it, it's not free necessarily. Even like when I adopted my dog, we rescued her. There's a fee, but then you get 15 years of therapy right there.
Yeah. And I remember in the psych ward, one thing that they did was pet therapy. And they would just bring in some dogs for us to literally just pet and snuggle with for a little bit. And I guess I didn't realize that that was actually like a therapy and something helpful. I just thought that was so exciting and so cute, but it did instantly bring up my mood. It really elevated how I was feeling. I was so excited.
Yeah, yeah, and like on college campuses, they'll like set up an area in like the campus quad or whatever with dogs, and you can just usually it's during like finals week or a stressful period, and the students can they'll walk by and they'll see the dogs. They're like, all right, fine, I'll go in and pet some dogs, and there's actually studies showing that that specific setup, like dog pop-ups on college campuses, actually improve the mental health of college students. So it's funny because you see those things, you're like ridiculous. You might think that, but it's actually really effective. And that makes me wonder about other things too. Like, what if they just put like a huge bounce house on a college campus, or like gave out like free Burger King or something like that? Like various interventions, specifically comparing those to dogs, how they would compare. Random thought.
I love that. I remember in undergrad when they would bring dogs on campus, and I thought it was so silly I was like, that's really how they're preparing us for finals. This is their idea of stress release. But I guess it really was a form of stress release. I do also wish that maybe there was access to more options. Like you said, whether it's free food, a lot of college students don't have access to a lot of food, or they don't have access to quality food. Even getting like a dining hall pass is a couple $1,000s a semester. So I wonder what it would have been like, or ways to exert energy. I mean, a lot of times, even the college gyms may cost a little bit of money. So I wonder what that would have been like if we had access to more easy interventions.
Yeah, very true. I mean, it makes me wonder if when those pop-ups happen with dogs on campus, is it because someone's like, our students are stressed, we got to do something, what should we do? I don't know, a dog pop-up. Or is there actual like careful science where they're like, we know these are effective, let's use the dog pop-up? Because if that's the case, then what about everything else that's been proven to be effective? Of course, college can be extremely stressful, and there can be that stress can be especially intense for those who have less access to various resources. So yeah, it makes me wonder whether students and other populations too are underserved in terms of mental health resources, which obviously the answer to that is unfortunately yes.
Yeah, especially like mental health resources on college campuses. I was talking with a couple of my classmates recently, and a few of them were saying how they need more therapy options, and it's just not accessible with campus because you get maybe like 3 sessions a semester. And if you don't have a car, for example, it's not necessarily very easy to get to a therapy setting, especially if you don't have the money for therapy. You probably don't have the money for Ubers or Lyfts to get there. And if the bus stops aren't stopping near a therapist's office, it can be really difficult to get that support you need. And even food options around campus, a lot of things that may seem really small that are minuscule that colleges don't realize. The amount of stress we're going through, the financial cost of being on that campus and having access to education make it really difficult if we're not providing those access to resources.
Not to put your college on the spot, but where are you enrolled currently?
I'm currently enrolled at Pepperdine doing my master's in clinical psych, but I'm at the West LA campus. I did my undergrad and my first master's at the University of Florida. That was a big thing, is access to healthy foods. And even I remember there was one place where you can build your own salad, and that was like so exciting. But I believe they closed at some point while I was there. So just the food options in general weren't really there. The dining hall was so expensive, and if you couldn't afford the dining hall pass for the semester, going in was like $10 every time. So it just was really hard to care for yourself in the small ways that can really help when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed.
Yeah, right. And it's funny, just reminded me of something. A friend and colleague of mine, his name's Harris Ayer. He's a fellow or professor at Rice University, and he studies like neuroscience and public policy, and super interesting, brilliant guy. And he recently published this paper through the Brookings Institute, proposing that we currently live in he calls it a brain negative economy, which is basically that the standard, like the most easy, accessible, cheap options are generally the things that are worst for our brains, whereas the more expensive, inaccessible or restricted access things are brain positive. And so he's calling for a change to a brain positive economy. And so that would look like a variety of things, but one of them, he points out that, for example, food options. You mentioned that there was a make your own salad bar, and you were so excited about this, and you're like, oh, then it's close. It's like, it's actually kind of ridiculous if you think about the fact that we live in an economy where a salad bar, a make your own salad bar, is like an exquisite luxury. And then you can go get a burger and fries for $2 plus tax. And it does actually say a lot about the way our economy is shaped and the impact that has on people. And his argument is that obviously it's important for health and wellness, but also government bodies should care about this, because if you're making it easiest to eat bad food, that's going to make you, it's going to not set you up for success cognitively, and it's basically a drain on the workforce. And so countries who operate under that economy are actually working at a disadvantage, because any country who will feed their people good quality food for cheap is going to have a higher more productive workforce, really. So it's a really interesting idea.
It is an interesting idea, and it's so true. What we put in our body matters. I know for me, one thing I currently do is I fly across the country every few days. So I'm in Florida taking care of my grandmother who has Alzheimer's on the weekends when I'm not in class. And then I'm in California in a hotel the other days while I'm in school at Pepperdine. So one thing for me is my immune system gets very weak because of this constant travel. Everyone's always sick on the planes and getting everyone else sick. And my access to food is a lot more limited because in my hotel room, I don't have a microwave. So even if I bring food, it has to be something I can eat cold. Otherwise, I'm constantly ordering food. And when I'm eating more unhealthy options, maybe more processed, fried options, I do notice that I feel more sluggish. My immune system is declining a lot quicker versus when I'm eating foods that have a lot of nutritious value, that have a lot of vitamins and antioxidants. I definitely feel a lot more energetic, and my immune system tends to last a tad bit longer. So really what you're putting in your body and what's accessible to you really does make such a difference. I don't think people really realize that. They're just like, access to food is so important, but access to quality food is really where we need to start shifting.
Yeah, exactly. And I echo that too. I mean, I've actually never paid attention to my diet relative to my immune system, but every single day as a scientist, as an author, I do a lot of cognitive work. And so I can trace a direct pattern between, oh, I had a slice of pizza for lunch and then I got nothing done in the afternoon, versus I worked out and then I had a salad and it was a more productive day. It's very, very easy to see. And of course, there's plenty of evidence, at least for exercise. I would assume for diet as well, although I haven't read those studies myself, but linking, what you eat to how high level you can perform as a thinker.
Yeah, and exercise is so important. And for so long, I thought that I would have to. I'm not like a big gym person. I don't have a lot of physical strength. I wish I did. I used to. Don't know what happened there. So lifting weights is not really, I lift 5 pounds. Lifting weights, not my thing. Going for a run, not my thing. And I thought if I wasn't able to do these things, then I wasn't exercising and I wasn't caring for my body. And then I learned just going for a brisk walk can make a difference, or even lifting 5 pounds and working with the strength that's in my body really made such a difference. So it doesn't have to be these intense workouts. Wish I could do them. It doesn't have to be these intense workouts. It could be something as small as going for a 10-minute walk during the day that really boosts your productivity levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the way I always describe it is, if you're hoping to find some level of improvement in your focus or your alertness or whatever it is, just elevate slightly from wherever you are now. If currently you are a person who sits down at your desk all day long, all you do, hopefully this person doesn't exist, but you wake up, you sit at your desk and you don't move from your desk, and then you go right to bed. You do no movement. Then okay, let's go with a 10-minute walk. It just create space for that somewhere in your day. Or if you're doing a 1 hour walk, then okay, see if you can add some push-ups or something, or an hour, 10 minutes. Like, just simple scaling up theoretically should enhance the effects. Of course it's not a linear direct relationship there, but and the same thing with sleep too. If you're sleeping 6 hours, try sleeping 6.5 hours for a week and see how much better you feel. All these things, sleep, exercise, diet, they're all extremely important, of course, for the health of your brain and body.
Yes, I think sleep is something that's okay, for me, it was really underrated. I had this idea that team no sleep was healthy. And there's a
Oh
lot of
no.
this messaging. Yeah, great at taking care of myself. There was a lot of messaging growing up that I internalized as, you'll sleep when you're dead, right? You have to get all this work done now, sleep when you're dead, sleep when you're retired, whatever it was. And I kind of lived in this idea of pushing yourself until you crashed, and maybe getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep was optimal.
Wow.
Because there was something my dad taught me at a young age, and I know he didn't mean it in a harmful way, but it was, you want to get up before everyone else. Those are your hours of advantage. You go to sleep when everyone else goes to sleep, but you wake up before them. So maybe you're going to bed at midnight and you're getting up by 4, 5 a.m. So from a young age, it was like you don't sleep and you use those extra hours to get ahead. I thought, great, I'll do that, and I'll drink 6 cups of coffee. So by middle school, I wasn't really sleeping. I was drinking probably a lot more caffeine than someone should drink, especially at 12, 13 years old, thinking that this is what productivity is. But as I got older, and I want to say older, as it got more and more into it, a couple months into it, I started to crash more and more, and I wasn't feeling well. And my mental health symptoms, definitely looking back, increased with the lack of caring for myself and that lack of sleep.
Yeah, I mean, that is robustly scientifically proven. Sleep is so important for brain health. And hey, newsflash to anyone who doesn't know, brain health is mental health. Those two things are directly related. And yeah, if you're undersleeping, then you will be more prone to anxiety, depression. You'll be poorer at stress management. You will do a worse job at cognitive tasks. And, of course, none of these things are good. And I have to say, I sleep a lot. I was very tired when I was about 12, 13 years old. I was like falling asleep in classes. And so I went and got a sleep study, and it turns out that I have narcolepsy, which is a sleep disorder where, it's most famous for the videos on YouTube of the wiener dog that's running around, and then it falls asleep, and then it gets back up and runs around and falls asleep. It's not quite like that in humans, but the idea is that you fall asleep spontaneously. And when you're not asleep, you have this extreme sleep pressure where you're very tired. And at any given moment, you're just a few minutes away from REM sleep, which is, it's not the deepest stage of sleep, but it's the one that takes the longest to get into. So for most people, it takes 60 to 90 minutes before you enter REM sleep and you start dreaming. For me, they found that I enter REM sleep in about 6 minutes. So 10% of the time. And so when I discovered this, I realized, okay, I really need to take care of my sleep, because if I don't, I truly can't get through the day. I'm just slogging. I could fall asleep. I literally could fall asleep at any minute. So when I was about 13, I discovered the value of sleep, and I started sleeping, 7 to 8 hours a night. I stopped doing things like sleeping with the TV on. I started doing things like going to bed at the same time every night. And my sleep has just been so regimented ever since then. If I get less than 8 hours a night, or in a given night, I will be stressed. Like I wake up and because of course I track my sleep. I have multiple sleep trackers. My bed tracks my sleep, and I'll wake up and I'll look and it'll say like this morning, 7 hours, 54 minutes. I'm like, oh, today's going to be a rough day. Which is ridiculous and not accurate. I think that as long as I'm above 7, I'm fine. But the other day I woke up and it said I slept 9.5 hours, and I was like, okay, cool. And I just find that I operate best with that. And when I slip from that, if I'm out late with friends, or I'm traveling, or, I take a red-eye flight and I don't sleep very well on the plane, it's a dramatic change in my mood and my outlook, really. I'm not as optimistic. I'm way more grouchy. Everybody can relate to that. You have a bad night of sleep and you're just snapping at everyone. And you're like, get away from me. It's real. For some reason, sleep is important for emotional regulation. And it's something that should not be ignored. So I'm glad that you came around to prioritizing sleep.
I wouldn't say I prioritize it yet, but I recognize that I'm not. Those red-eye flights are terrible, aren't they? That's when my mental breakdowns get really bad, is 2 days after a red-eye. But going back to something you said, you were talking kind of about sleep hygiene and these things you do to get that quality sleep. And I don't think that's talked about enough. I know it's really easy to sit there and scroll on social media until you're ready for bed, or a lot of people like to have the TV on when they go to sleep, and that really can impact the quality of sleep you're getting, as well as small things like having it might not even be a small thing, but like having soda before bed or working out right before bed. How these different things can impact your quality of sleep based on caffeine or that increase in endorphins or that bright light in your face.
Yeah. Oh, there are many things that are important, and every time I talk about this, I'm like, I always forget at least a couple. So if I think of anything throughout the rest of the episode, I'll throw it out. But for now, I mean, like I mentioned, one, going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time roughly every morning is really important, because when you train your brain, actually, let me step back for a second. Let's just think about how incredible it is that every single night we fall asleep for up to 8 or 9 hours. When you compare that with when you close your eyes during the day, you don't just sleep for 8 or 9 hours. You wake up after 45 minutes or something like that, right? So like, how incredible is it that the brain can coordinate this extensive sleep pattern on a 24-hour rhythm? And that's because of our circadian rhythm, which is regulated by things like melatonin. And so the brain has a system that's devoted to making sure that that long period of sleep happens every 24 hours. So when you sleep at the same time every night consistently, like I've been doing for 15 years, your brain is just so entrained to that you naturally get tired at the same time, because your brain's like, oh, it's that time of the day, time to start producing melatonin and fall asleep. And so when you deviate from that, you get worse sleep, and you also prevent your body from getting into that like consistent rhythm of releasing melatonin at the same time. The upside also is that when you start producing melatonin at a certain time, your brain is already beginning to settle in for bed at a certain time, and you fall asleep much more easily. So you have less of that sitting in bed waiting to fall asleep experience. So entrainment, really important. You mentioned phone screens. So a lot of people know like you shouldn't look at your screen before bed. Fewer people probably know the reason why. And the reason is because, as I mentioned, melatonin levels, they progressively rise as we deepen into the night. And then as it becomes morning and the sun comes out, melatonin levels drop and we wake up. That's why you wake up, when you're in a room that the curtains aren't drawn because are open, because the light's coming through and your eyes are like, oh, it's daytime, time to wake up. And it's the same thing that happens when you're on your phone. If you're watching TV, you're on your phone. It's especially bad if you're on your phone, though, because what a lot of people will do, my wife does this, I get on her all the time. She has her brightness all the way up and she's laying in bed with her phone inches from her face. And I'm like, excuse me, can you please turn on your brightness? I'm trying to sleep here. But in reality, I should be warning her more that when you have a light directly in front of your eyes, so close at that brightness level, even at a low brightness level, it is sending a signal to your brain that there's light entering your eyes. Your brain doesn't know if it's a phone or if it's the sun. It's just a system of neural circuits interacting. They just know it's light. And so that means when there's light, melatonin levels go down. And when your melatonin levels go down, it's harder to fall asleep. It's harder to stay asleep. It's harder to achieve deep quality sleep. And so you don't have a good quality sleep. So, for that reason, it's always good to avoid screens in general. Burn a candle and read a book is like the ideal thing. And if you do that, try not to do it in bed. You mentioned sleep hygiene. That's one of the sleep hygiene things, that you shouldn't do anything but sleep in your bed, because same thing, like context cues, when you lay down in bed, your brain should say, I am here to sleep. I have never done anything here but sleep, so I'm going to sleep. Whereas if you go in your bed and you play video games or watch TV or scroll on your phone or read a book or do any other thing, your brain's like, what are we here to do? Is it something exciting like reading a book, or maybe reading a book's not as exciting? Is it something exciting like watching TV or going online shopping or something like that? No, it's always sleep. It always should be sleep. Although I think the evidence for that one is a little bit less strong than the other things. I could go on and on. There are many things that are important, and I'm happy to do that if you want me to.
What I'm realizing though from what you've said so far is I do everything wrong. And now I'm recognizing how it's impacting me. So when I'm in a hotel, I tend to, there's not as much space. So I do tend to lay in bed and watch Frasier until I'm ready to fall asleep. And that's my current show. And a lot of times I realize it'll take a lot longer to fall asleep. Last night it took forever to fall asleep. I woke up multiple times. I'm like checking the clock. It's 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4:45 a.m. And I just don't feel, I feel exhausted in the morning. And I'm like, oh, I just get bad sleep in a hotel room. But it's not just the fact that I'm not home. It's the fact that I'm doing small things that might seem like not a big deal, like watching TV before bed, but it's really impacting the quality of sleep I'm getting, as well as the fact that even when I'm home, sometimes I like to just sit in bed and get work done. And that's really changing the way my brain views the bed. So now I'm starting to realize why I get the little bit of sleep I try to get is so low quality. It's small things that I'm doing.
Yeah. You also mentioned you have a dog. Do you let your dog sleep in bed with you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I do too. And that's where I go against my rules. But yeah, dogs have very different sleep habits than us. They wake up way more often. They move around. I don't know about your dog, but for me, Zoe she always must be touching someone. So she'll often lay against me and then she'll roll on her back, always with her butt towards me. I wish her face would be towards me, but it's always her butt. And then she extends all of her limbs, and she's a pretty big dog. So she takes up a huge amount of our bed, and then she'll also, because her butt's toward me, her legs will be extended like right to my face, and then she'll start running in her sleep, and she'll be kicking me in the face. It's such it's far from optimal as far as a sleep environment, but I love sleeping with her in the bed. I think it's the cutest thing ever. She doesn't really snuggle, but it's just nice to have her there anyway. But for any like new dog owners who are like, oh, I'm not sure if I should do it, you're way better off not letting them sleep in the bed. They will disrupt your sleep every single night. Um, and then you could always still invite them on the bed for some snuggles in the morning or something like that.
Okay, see, me and my dog are so opposite. So I disrupt her sleep. She hates me in the middle of the night. She crawls up next to me, puts her little nose up against my nose, falls asleep. She snores. It's great. She does not move the entire night. I, on the other hand, wake up 200 times and she wants to cry she does cry every single time. Like, what is wrong with you, Mom? I'm trying to sleep. So we're a tad opposite. I wish she was the problem.
Trust me, you don't wish she was the problem. There's nothing like it. That is adorable though, that she's so sleepy and just settles in with you. I wish my dog would do that.
Yeah, and she's 8 pounds, so she's so tiny, just wants to curl up and sleep all the time.
Oh yeah.
But
that's different.
It's hard when one of you is when one person in the bed or one animal in the bed is not giving you that quality sleep, that's interrupting your sleep pattern. And it's really important that we're recognizing what's impacting our sleep and small things that we can do, whether it's just moving our butt a little bit that way so that it's not kicking you all night. Just small things that we can do to increase our sleep.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw one more out because I think it's important. Ambient noise. So I mentioned ambient noise is generally bad. Any like unpredictable noise events are bad because you don't want to be woken up from sleep. Every time you're woken up from sleep, it compromises the quality of your sleep. And so like if I was recently in New York City, and I've never been in a hotel in New York City where they put me on the second floor. I've always been like, 10th plus floor. And as soon as they said it, I was like, okay, this will be fine. Maybe I'll be on street level. It'd be kind of cool. Worst idea ever. It was so loud all night, honking cars, people yelling and stuff like that. And so I woke up so many times. And if you live in a place or constantly sleep in a place where you have this type of, environment, the best thing you can do is use a white noise machine to kind of block that out. Because when it's silent and all of a sudden someone yells, it wakes you up for a second, you realize everything's fine, you fall back asleep. If you have a white noise machine and they yell, you can think of there's a steady level of noise, and then a yell kind of gets muffled out by the white noise, and then hopefully it won't alert you, it won't alarm you, and wake you up. But on the other hand, if you live in an environment where there's no sound, it's silent, I would recommend against using a white noise machine because there's really no reason to. And there's no evidence at all that white noise improves sleep unless it's blocking out other sounds.
That just gave me the justification I needed to buy this white noise machine that I saw on Instagram. I was like, this is so cute. I need it. I don't know why I need it. But I'm always in airport hotels where it's nice and loud all hours of the night. And I live right when I'm in Florida on the river. So there's always boats and partying going on. And that does cause me to wake up or extend the amount of time it takes for me to fall asleep because that noise really impacts me. I tried earplugs for a while. And after like a couple hours, I wake up and it's hurting me. Don't know why my ears are so sensitive to earplugs. But it's so important that we find small things to block out that noise, and now I have the justification I need to buy that white noise machine that I want.
Yeah, and there's also apps. There are plenty of apps like on iPhone or whatever, probably on Android, I'm sure. I have one, I think it's called White Noise. I think it's free. And they have like a river sound or like rain or white noise, brown noise, pink noise, or whatever, which are different frequencies of static, basically. And that's a great one too, because it's portable. And, then especially if you're traveling all the time, you have to pack your machine. But you could always get two, one for each location. But yeah, I strongly recommend that especially if you're traveling through places. It's easy enough for anybody to download a white noise app. I'm not sponsored by the white noise app, but any white noise producing machine or app, and just have it accessible. Because then if you're in a place where it's so noisy and you don't have earplugs, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Try white noise. It might help you.
You just unjustified my purchase. However, it is so important that we find accessible ways, and that's probably a lot more realistic to use an app on your phone, especially a free app on your phone to get that, I want to say support, but that extra tool to be able to get some quality sleep. Because going back to what we've said, sleep is part of your brain health. It's part of what helps you not just be productive, but helps manage your emotions. I know that for me, lack of sleep causes me to be a lot more susceptible to what's the word I want to use? It causes a lot more emotional reactions that maybe aren't warranted, as well as makes me a bit more moody. It weakens my immune system and it just impacts my ability to have a good day, honestly.
Yeah, and you have a tough situation. I mean, going back and forth, especially through different time zones, because,
Yes.
like I mentioned with the circadian rhythm and the influence of light, when you're going 3 hour difference every week, your brain really can't get into a rhythm of predicting when the sun's going to set, and the brain doesn't work in a way where it's like, okay, I'll just know that Monday through Friday we're on Pacific time, and then Saturday and Sunday we're on East Coast time. That's not how the brain works. It needs consistent, because the brain didn't evolve on a 7-day business week. It evolved on a planet Earth that, the sun comes up and goes down at the same time. And if it changes rapidly, that's basically impossible in the conditions that it evolved in. We didn't have airplanes during evolution of the human brain. So there's no such mechanism to protect us against immediate rapid time changes like that.
Yeah, and it changes every semester, my schedule. So right now, Thursdays, I travel all day, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm home. Monday morning on a flight, get to California, in school for 6 hours of lecture. And this week I got really, really sick. I think the jet lag just hit me, and that's going to impact my attendance, which is going to impact my grade. So I am going to clip this piece of the episode, submit it to my teachers when they try to come for my grade.
Yeah, I mean, not to, this is kind of a personal question, I guess, but are your teachers aware that you're doing that schedule?
Some teachers are and some aren't. Usually if a teacher asks me, like, the first day of class where they do those icebreakers and they want to know like where you're from. So if a teacher asks me, oh, when did you move here from Florida? Then I'm usually like, oh, I haven't. I go back and forth. Otherwise, no, they don't know.
Yeah.
They should know. I should tell them.
Right. If I was your professor and I knew that every weekend you were going cross country to take care of your grandmother, I would be like, oh, if you need extra time, let me know, because that's pretty intense.
if you can't do these extreme assignments in the time frame, you
Right.
need an extra day because you're spending an entire day traveling. Let me know. That'd be great.
Right.
And also just that flexibility of like when I get really sick, like that jet lag hit me and I was not able to lift my head at all. I was very, very physically sick and there was no way I was getting to class. But being able to recognize when you do need that rest and when you can't push yourself. I mean, I physically could not push myself, otherwise I would have. But really being able to recognize when we can't push ourselves past our limits and respect where we're at and meet ourselves where we're at is so important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to give yourself grace, especially physical grace, and um, I always think like, oh, if I got sick, it wouldn't be so bad because I could just sit in bed and work and I would get so much done. Or I guess I shouldn't sit in my bed, but sit on the couch and work and get so much done. But then like the reality is you just can't be as productive. And even if it's a mild cold, you get this kind of brain fog. And it's just so important to be able to like relent on yourself a bit and just say, okay, it's time to rest, and luckily I think we live in a society that has become increasingly accepting of that type of stuff. If someone's sick, like, okay, you can take the day off work, do what you need to do. I know a lot of workplaces now have mental health days where it's like sick days, you can take days off. It's I'm glad to see that the trajectory of where we're going with accepting and enabling people to rest. But yeah, I mean, when you're sick and if you continue to push and you work hard still, it's going to take you much longer to get better. You really need to devote time and energy to just resting and letting your body fight whatever you're fighting.
Yes, you really do. And I love to hear that businesses are now allowing like mental health days. I know at school, it's like, oh, just zoom in, or you can submit your assignments online. Don't worry about it. So
Oh, mental
love that.
breakdown, you can do that from home. Just be here on Zoom.
And I love teachers who do that. Thank you for understanding. Let me just sit on Zoom for 3 hours instead. That's the same thing as sitting in class with my head up. Um, but it is really important that we learn to give ourselves grace and we learn to give grace to other people, whether it's friends, colleagues, employees,
Yeah,
students, really making sure that we're allowing people to do the things they need to do to support their brain health.
right on. You said it.
Ben, thank you so much for joining me today. As we are wrapping up, can you give one piece of advice just a random piece of advice to someone who wants to optimize their brain health?
Ooh, someone who wants to optimize their brain health. Um,
I made it so vague.
yeah, I immediately reached out into so many different areas. I'm gonna go with um social interaction. A lot of people kind of neglect the value of interaction, especially in-person interaction. There is some value to, a Zoom like this. I mean, not to kiss up, but this has been a great conversation. I have enjoyed this genuinely, but I do think it would be even more pleasant in person. Anyways, I'm getting off track, but social interaction is really important for well-being and brain health. It's one of the foundational pillars of brain health. Um, you know, I tend to bring up evolution a lot, but we evolved to work in groups, and so because it's beneficial to be with others, because back then it would encourage survival. We are better at fighting off creatures when we are in groups because we're really smart and we can teamwork really well. Because of that, the brain has mechanisms to bring reward to interactions. It wants you to enjoy being around other people, and so socializing really does have meaningful impact on your health and wellness and your brain function in so many different ways. So whether it's visiting with family, seeing friends, talking to coworkers, calling up old friends, anything, I think that at least personally I can say, like, I work from home these days, and it can be brutal, the isolation of just being alone, not having coworkers to go talk about random things with. So just make an effort to see people, to engage with others, and to give your brain that social stimulation that it actually kind of needs to function at a high level.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.